welcome to OEN Engage. Thank you for joining us for this session, which is getting to know our Manifold community. My name is Karen Lauritsen. I'm Senior Director with the Open Education Network. A couple of housekeeping items. We kicked off the week with our land acknowledgement and community norms. You can find those links in the chat. They're at z.umn.edu/OEN land acknowledgement and z.umn.edu/OEN community norms. This session is being recorded. If you have questions, please feel free to submit them in the chat. We will be keeping a close eye on things there. And there will also probably be an opportunity later to unmute and discuss if you would like to chat and participate in that way. I mentioned I am Karen Lauritsen. I am joined by Jamie Whitman and Teresa Flett, who will introduce themselves shortly. We are also joined by Robin Miller and Terrence Smyer from the Manifold team, which we are very fortunate to have with us. So hi, welcome again. In addition to my professional role, in my spare time, I like to create wildlife habitat in the garden, and I'm also learning how to draw. And I mention these things because, of course, in addition to our roles as professionals, we are also human beings, and in part of building community, it's always nice to get to know one another as more complete, full human beings. So what is Manifold? Well, in short, it's an open source publishing workflow. It was developed in collaboration between 3 organizations: the CUNY Graduate Center, that's the City University of New York, along with the University of Minnesota Press, and Cast Iron Coding. As you can see, it is an online publishing platform that you can read on various devices. So why does the OEN offer Manifold? Well, our goal is to support multiple publishing pathways. As you know, there are many different publishing tools that you can use. Some have certain strengths and some have certain weaknesses. But in offering support for multiple publishing pathways, we hope to encourage more people to publish to create more OER. We also see our role at the organization as one that can provide shared infrastructure. So perhaps you're at an institution that does not have the resources to have your own publishing instance. You can come to the OEN, or you can send your authors to the OEN, and they have an option on which they can publish. And as I mentioned, of course, we want to share more OER, and that is sort of the base or the inspiration for everything that we do. So our agenda for our time together today is to introduce you to our Manifold community. In addition to the few people I mentioned at the top, I see members of the community who are here, who I invite to introduce yourselves and participate. We will share the Manifold community guidelines, which is the structure that underlies this shared infrastructure. And then we'll talk about getting started with Manifold and go over a few frequently asked questions. There should also be time at the end for your questions today. So, what does the OEN Manifold community do exactly? Well, we are busy publishing OER. That includes textbooks and journals. We create open pedagogy projects. We use Manifold as an open repository or curation tool. We can form public and private reading groups, and we support and inspire one another by sharing the work that we create in collections, by posting questions in our Google group, and otherwise kind of turning to each other so that we're not working in isolation. So the Manifold community is comprised of people working at more than 80 institutions. And that includes groups that we like to call the Manifold Curious. Maybe you don't have a project that you know you want to create, but you want to explore Manifold, see what it can do, all the way to member publishers, people who have robust programs and have published several OER and are sharing them with a wider audience. All of this started with the Manifold pilot group a few years ago when we brought this tool to you, the members of our community, and said, hey, what can you do with Manifold? Would this be useful to you in your open education publishing program? And after a year or two of experimentation, you said, yes, we can use this. And the proof is in the pudding. If you are to look at our OEN Manifold instance, there's a lot of great resources there and the reflection of so much work that people in this group have done in concert with their faculty, students, and others. I also want to shout out again to Terrence and Robin, who have been instrumental in building this community and offering their hands-on support and guidance when we get stuck or we're not sure about the best way to approach a particular manifold question or issue. They are in our group, and it's, I think, really special that we have their support. So, what is your role should you decide to be a member of the Manifold community? Well, you are the publisher and you're responsible for the content in your collection. You are the one who has the power to create those projects. And of course, with that power, you're the one deciding what to get published. So we're not reading proposals or looking over anybody's project. We're basically saying we will support a contact person at your institution when you decide, hey, this is a project we want to publish or want to support. In the process of doing so, you ensure that those projects, including images, are all openly licensed, and you directly support your authors and provide project consultation. Now, of course, you may turn to us and say, do you have recommendations for how I should roll out Manifold to my authors? What is a good way to support them if I have limited time and capacity? And that's the kind of stuff that we're happy to think with you together on. So the OEN's role is to provide access to Manifold and maintain that instance. We support one project creator at a member institution or consortium. That is our point person. It's also the person who's listed as a contact on the collection. We facilitate OEN Manifold community support. So let's say somebody posts a question to the group and says, I can't figure out how to use a public reading group. We would perhaps decide, hey, there's enough people here who would like this demonstrated. We'd be happy to put together a session for you and get together in person, or we may just resolve that issue over email, depending. So we do look to you to inform our support, and we are here to offer it, whatever that may be. All of this said, let's say you publish a project and it does not have an open license or it doesn't meet our community guidelines. It's possible that we may unpublish a project if it does not meet our community expectations. This has not happened yet. This is not something we're looking to do, but it is a caveat if something were to go way off the rails. We are here to work with you on remedying that. So with that introduction, I am very happy to introduce a real live member of the Manifold community who can talk through her experience and offer a case study in what you can do with the tool. So Teresa, I'll turn things over to you.
All right, great. Hello, everybody. So I am Teresa Flett. I was the previous director for St. Charles Community College. I just retired June 30th, so I have been off the grid for a while. I think my colleague Rimiana is in the audience, so at the end she might have some things about what's been happening recently. Thanks for all the applause. But I did want to go ahead and just share my experience about why we picked Manifold and some of our experiences with it. I had to give you 3 facts about myself. So recently retired, love trashy reality TV. And then in April, I did attend the 2025 TCM Film Festival in LA. So I am a huge old movie buff. It was quite fun. It's a good time. Hopefully more traveling in my future. We, as at St. Charles Community College in Missouri, we are consortial members. We have been consortial members of OEN for quite a while through Mobius. I decided to go ahead and become full members, mainly to get access to Manifold. I don't truthfully remember exactly the session I attended that made me decide to do that, but I do remember that there were things about Manifold that seemed really appealing to me as far as publishing tool. We have been working hard on our campus to transfer over to open educational resources, but there were more more faculty on campus wanting to explore authorship. So I was kind of looking for some kind of tool for that. The things about Manifold instances that I had seen, in some sessions were the collaborative nature of it with the reading groups and things like that, kind of moving more towards an open education, beyond open educational resources and open education. I felt like it was an interesting tool for that. Interestingly enough, our two projects are not in the humanities or anything like that. They're in the sciences. So not that that can't still happen, but our nursing program, we have a pretty robust nursing program, and they have been talking for a long time about switching over to all open educational resources. It's taking them a while because of the way the courses are structured and the textbooks they use, go beyond one course. So for one course to switch, they would all have to switch pretty much at the same time. But I did get approached by one of the nursing faculty that were looking at a nursing text used in the bridge program that would bridge between the ADN and the LPN nursing curriculums. So that was, she had found a textbook that she liked, but there was a lot of information in it. It was from OpenRN about Wisconsin standards and legal things having to do with the state of Wisconsin. So she wanted to switch those to Missouri. So Manifold seemed like a good way to ingest that text and make those changes pretty easily. And it did work out pretty easily. We are looking at other projects. I did start before I retired working on with a lab manual that I'm not sure if we're going to go with Manifold for that one. But I was working with a computer ethics class to publish a new textbook, and I saw that it did get actually published. So yay, that kind of happened on my last couple days right before I left. And so it's nice to see that. So we have two projects now out on Manifold. So but the first one was the nursing management professional concepts. So we changed it to the Missouri edition. She pretty much just changed those instances of where the updating references to Wisconsin to reflect Missouri specific context. So it was a fairly easy project to do. There were little tweaks that I worked with her on, mainly on citations to the new content, making sure the links were updated to the new content. But other than that, it went pretty smoothly, and she's been pretty happy with it, I believe, so far. So that was my experience. I'm not sure if there's, I could answer any questions at the end. The computer ethics book that we did, there was a lot more involved in that one because it's an original text written by our faculty and Ed Weber. And so he has obviously a strong computer background. So he did a lot of the tweaking between the ingesting and tweaking it to look correctly in Manifold. So it helps if you have some other expertise on your campus, but the Manifold community has been very helpful too. And I've reached out to them a couple of times during the process. So that was my experience.
Thank you so much, Teresa, and thank you for highlighting some of the differences that can arise between projects. So you may have an author who's very comfortable getting in Manifold and doing all the things, and then you might find yourself doing more of that on behalf of the author. So there are a lot of different ways that things can unfold, and of course, you can help direct how those things unfold. So
yes, with the nursing textbook, she gave me a list of things that she was having trouble with, and I went in and helped her with it, but it was minor tweaks. And then with the computer ethics textbook, Ed just jumped in on himself and did a lot of the work himself. So I only had to do some suggestions about table of contents and other content that way.
Great. Thanks again. Jamie, I'll hand things over to you. I don't know if there's anything in the chat that we should address. I don't have it open, but if so, I hand it off.
Yeah, so we actually just got a question in. It says we have faculty that are working with faculty outside our institution on OER projects. While there are several workarounds for Pressbooks instance, how would access for Manifold for those that are not at our campus?
I think we've had this happen already. Is that right, Jamie? Yeah.
Yeah, we've had a couple of groups. We had some folks who were working on a statewide project, and so they the one institution was a member, and we'll sort of discuss this a little bit later on when we get to the FAQs. But as the project creator, and as Karen sort of mentioned in the roles too, that is in your purview as the project creator / sort of admin for your institution. If you want to be working with those folks outside of your institution and granting them access, we'll also get started in just a second with our getting started guides, which also talk about how to provide that access to folks. So all of that is in here. But yes, it's up to you to sort of manage those relationships and that project within Manifold. And then one other question, you mentioned that the campus point person, campus team would be responsible for ensuring open licensing of borrowed content, but who is responsible for assuring accessibility compliance? So that also would fall to our project creators. I believe we have updated the community guidelines recently to include accessibility as part of the responsibilities for our project creators or campus admins as part of those same types of expectations for managing your folks within Manifold. All right. So I'll jump in introducing myself, even though I've answered some questions already, but I'm Jamie Whitman. I'm the Open Educational Practices Specialist with the OEN. So I get to work really closely with Karen in our open publishing pathway, as well as with Tanya Gross, our Director of Educational Programs, and our open pedagogy pathway in creating resources on those different areas. Outside of work, I enjoy playing in a wind ensemble. Typically, I play the French horn, hiking with my family, and DIYing all sorts of projects. And so the first thing I'll be talking about is our Getting Started guides. And I'll put a link to that in the chat. So this is really for you to jump into Manifold. We start with the very basics of how to get a project started. That includes adding access for authors and how to add and embed resources. And then just last month, I finished some accessibility guides for Manifold as well. So this is both to how to use the Manifold editor and ensure that things like headings and color contrast, alt text, are all included, and how you do that within the Manifold editor, and also how to make sure that any documents that you plan to ingest into Manifold are set up for accessibility too. And a special thanks to Robin, who is here with us, and her colleague Christina, who created their own Getting Started guides that are openly licensed that I was able to adapt, as well as to Elliot Stevens from the University of Washington, who had created some guides around accessibility in Manifold that are also openly licensed that I could adapt for our community. But these are all available right on our Manifold instance, and they walk you through pretty much everything you need to really get started. And so once you have gotten started, you publish that project, you are at Teresa's level of a project creator with 2 projects published. What we will then do is create a Manifold collection for your institution or your consortium. So there are a little over 10 different institutions listed on this slide here. And so all of these institutions have at least one project that is published, while most of them have multiple projects that are published. And so what that looks like is we'll gather up all of your projects. We'll put them in a special collection for you. And here is the link to our collections. So they're in a specific place within our Manifold instance. And then on each collection, we have the contact information for your project creator, your point person for your institution. And that way, if folks are really interested in adopting or adapting the projects that you've created and published, or maybe they're really interested in the way you set it up or the layout that you've used, Manifold, what's really nice about Manifold is that it's really modular and you can really create a look and feel that fits best for your project and your specific OER. So folks might be interested in some creative expressions that you've used within your. So this is kind of a follow-up to the question in the chat and to the roles that Karen talked about earlier. But some expectations for managing Manifold would be that you consult with your faculty before they begin creating in Manifold, especially to ensure that they understand Creative Commons licenses. Everything in the OEN Manifold instance must have a Creative Commons license that allows for editing. So any license without that non-derivative clause, except for student work. Karen mentioned we have a couple of open pedagogy projects already in our Manifold instance. And so, in keeping with the principles of open pedagogy, we want to ensure that students are able to select a license that best fits their work or that they're the most comfortable with sharing. So of course, exceptions are made for student work in regards to the types of license you can use. And then sort of final expectation, you'll review the content your faculty create, make sure that everything is openly licensed and work with your authors to remedy that if it's not. And this also, the accessibility question that was in the chat would fall under these expectations as well. So ensuring that your authors are hopefully starting with accessibility at the beginning instead of having to remedy that content at the end. And all of these roles and expectations and the way our Manifold community operates falls under this shared understanding. Our community guidelines are available on our website. Give me 1 second. I have the link. And you can view all of the community guidelines. This is a short form that's linked on here that really is just agreeing to these terms and ensuring that you are aware of your own roles, the OEN's role with our Manifold instance. Okay, so I think we have kind of covered what a project creator is, but it is basically the point person for your institution or your consortia. It is what Teresa was at her institution. She now has a new colleague, Rumiana, who has taken over that position for her. But it means that you are in charge. So Teresa was the one to agree to the guidelines. She was the one to greenlight all the projects that they've done so far, including generating the access for her authors and assigning different roles that can be given. There's an editor role, an author role. So those are some of the back end pieces that you can review in the Getting Started guides. And then the project creator reviews those publications, again, checking for Creative Commons licenses, compatibility with those licenses, and accessibility. And so I mentioned institutions and consortium, and Teresa also mentioned that her institution was a part of a consortium. And so consortial state systems also have access to Manifold, but they manage that access for all of those institutions within that consortium. So there's one collection per consortia, which means there's also one project creator for that consortia. And so really it is a way to centralize publishing for that consortium and for those institutions that are part of it. However, like Teresa mentioned, if you are part of a consortium, but you want to be the one in charge, you want to be that project creator and have your own individual collection, you can join the OEN at a discounted rate because of that relationship with your consortium. And lastly, how do I get access? It is super duper easy. You just have to ask. You can fill out this form, which I also have a link to. Give me 1 second. And this will take you to our form. So this is something that you might want to discuss with the colleagues at your colleagues at your institution or your consortium to decide who's going to be that project creator. Since it's just one person, you can decide amongst yourselves who is the best fit for that. But it's a really short form. Just tell us who you are, where you're from, and we will get you set up with Manifold. And again, all of this can be found in our community guidelines, which there is a link to in the chat already. I can post another link if you need it, but this covers, again, the eligibility, the different roles that Karen talked about and expectations, and a link to the request form and how to get that access.
And we have come to the end of our slides. Okay, everyone, that is our orientation to the Manifold community with the most important all-inclusive link there on that slide, manifold.open.umn.edu. Now I will stop sharing my screen and check in to see if there are any questions that you would like to ask of one another or of the Manifold team. And it looks like we already have one from Claire. How does Manifold compare with Pressbooks and or LibreText? Well, I know that the University of Washington has done a side-by-side comparison of Manifold and Pressbooks. I'm not sure LibreText, but I'll look for that link while others may wish to chime in.
I guess I would ask what you're looking for in the publishing platform to see what the differences are. You know, Pressbooks and Manifold both have an inline editor that you can use to create text from scratch. You can also ingest documents, Word documents, and EPUBs to, if you've already started working or worked with authors in a format that they're more familiar with. Even Google Docs can also be ingested into Manifold, so you're not starting from scratch if you don't want to. There's a lot of multimedia options. There are a lot of, I think, one thing I mentioned previously is that there's a lot of modularity within Manifold, and you have a lot more freedom to create the look and feel of an OER, whereas Pressbooks has more of that traditional textbook look to it. Yeah, I don't know if Robin or Terrence, you want to add anything from the Manifold team perspective, but yeah.
I get this question all the time, and I would say the one big thing, because we also at the City University of New York have a Pressbooks instance as well. The big one is Manifold projects can contain more than one text. So when you think about a pressbook is a single book. So that's really, aside from all the little bits of differences, when you create a Manifold project, you can think of it like a digital container. And so you can have multiple elements in there. Also, Manifold projects don't have to be text related at all. They can be entirely resources. So that's, I think, the biggest difference to me is if you have multiple texts, say you're building a syllabus or a course reader and you want to have multiple texts, a Manifold project is a great way to get them all in one place. Whereas you can do all the same things in Pressbooks, but you would have multiple Pressbooks projects to do that.
And I would say that is, even though we haven't used it that way, that is one of the main reasons that it appealed to me when I saw the demonstrations about it. And that was one of the reasons I went ahead and made this step to become full members to get access to it. So even though we haven't used it that way, that is a very appealing thing, because I think that is something that faculty want. They just haven't quite reached that stage yet of knowing that it's there and they can use it that way yet out on our campus.
Thank you all for those reflections. Anne-Marie also noted in the chat that she did a cost comparison and that Manifold was more affordable, even though she upgraded from a consortial to an institutional OEN membership. If I remember right, Anne-Marie, you had a very helpful sheet, like why we should be using Manifold. So go ahead. Oh, I saw you on mute for a second. Anyway, if somebody is thinking about this and they are looking for a way to kind of lay out an argument, let me know and we can send you resources for that. Can Manifold handle H5P? Yes. Terrence dropped some examples in the chat. Do you have some examples of using Manifold for curation instead of authoring? Is Claire's question. Oh, I see, Anne-Marie, your mic isn't working. Okay, thank you. Now, I know a lot of times there are examples at our fingertips. And Claire, as Robin was saying, I think that you can have multiple documents, or you can kind of create a container or a collection. In some ways, you could think of many different Manifold projects that are on our instance or the CUNY instance as curation. Other questions about what it's like to work with Manifold? Trade-offs with other tools, how it works in the OEN. Anne-Marie dropped in her cost comparison argument, which worked. So thank you for sharing that.
And we did briefly mention it, but you can also use Manifold to host journals too. And so we do have an institution that is using the OEN's Manifold instance for a journal. And so that is also available. It's right on our homepage, but you can take a look.
Claire, Robin just dropped in an example for you, as did Anne-Marie, for curation examples.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if that's exactly what you're looking for. If you can tell me more about your ideas for curation, I might be able to find some more examples for you.
Well, as you all know, this is not your last chance. If you have more questions about Manifold, you can post them in our Google group. You can join up with us again in about 45 minutes when we have a publishing debrief session for all of today's OER publishing sessions. And it's not just today, it's not just this week. We're always here for you as you think about what sort of publishing support you may be in a position to offer at your institution. So please don't ever be shy about reaching out. Oh, I see Rumyana has a question. Do you plan to make any enhancements to the platform? For example, if you ingest a Word doc, it can be hard to have your images in a proper format.
So that's a difficult question, but it is possible to do it. That what you're hoping for there, it just requires that you use word styles to do that. And so you would need to create your own custom word styles. And then you would have to work with the OEN team because these are settings that can only be affected by a system admin. You can then create custom mappings from those styles to HTML elements and then target those HTML elements with a CSS and then style those images so that you could have one, say, flush left with text cascading around it on the right or vice versa, or have an image centered. That's possible, but it's a more advanced technique that you need to do to achieve that. And we do have documentation for that that I can drop in the chat here.
And that is the type of question that Terrence and Robin are always so quick to have an answer to in our Google group. It is such a a boon to this community to have them both so involved with us. They just have the best answers and they're so quick. And sometimes Terrence will even make a little video to walk you through it. And it's very, very helpful. So we are very lucky to have Robin and Terrence.
And as a community, we can also look at those Word doc templates. I know that we may have investigated that previously, and so it's just sort of an instance-wide implementation that we would need to do, which we've done for a couple other things to improve life for our users. So Will says, I'm interested in long-term preservation. While textbooks typically have a use within time element, I can see the need to want to look back to original versions or case studies from a previous edition, etc. that might be a concern. Anne-Marie says, I'm publishing a second edition in Manifold and linked to the first edition also in Manifold, so both live on and are downloadable. Anything else anyone would like to add on the preservation topic?
Only that there is a preservation component built into Manifold so that you can export projects. And so Manifold will package up the project into a Baggett container, and it'll basically convert all of the texts that live within that project into an EPUB3, regardless of how they were brought into the system. So if you brought in a Word document or a series of Word documents, those will be converted to EPUB3. Same for a Google document. And that'll be exported along with the metadata for the project, the metadata for each of the individual text, and all of the resources and the associated metadata for that. and then you can send it on to your IR or to a preservation agency like Portico or something like that.
Thank you. Claire asks, are the completed manifold projects ingested in other OER repositories, or do you have to search there directly? I think that's our favorite answer, which is it depends. It depends what the project creator decides to do. So for example, if a portable file is available, a complete portable file, as you know, that's one of the requirements for the Open Textbook Library. So it is possible that a manifold project would also be in the OTL, for example. It would just need to meet the OTL criteria, nothing special. And so sometimes, but we definitely encourage people in the manifold community to make the resources that they create meet the OTL criteria, and then we're very happy to cross-list it there. A few more examples of curation projects are coming in. Would we need to individually submit manifold items to the OTL, or is that done another way? I think that's probably the best way. Jamie, do you agree?
Yes, that is at least currently the process too. So if I know there are a couple of things from your institution on there, Stephen. And so yes, you would submit the form for each of those. But potentially that's something we could again come back to as a community to see if there's another process to make that more efficient or easier to.
Thank you for that question. Anne-Marie asks, what do you see as intersections, if any, between a manifold project used in a course and the LMS page for that course section? I really wish you could unmute to say more.
I might be able to now. Can
Oh, yeah, you sound great.
Yes. I have a headset and I didn't have my microphone in front of my mouth, but I do now. So I'm looking at one of the examples in the chat, and it strikes me as sort of, it could almost be a replacement for the LMS page for the class because it has the course schedule and the assignments and the other things. I don't really talk about Manifold with faculty that way because they're expected to use our LMS and have their syllabus and their, standard things in there. But I see this example from CUNY, the Modern Art and OER Writing course, and it really looks like you could ditch the LMS and just use Manifold. So is it just different in different contexts?
Yeah, Marie. So we get this a lot, and there is a official, unofficial policy at CUNY to use the LMS, as many institutions have. Institutions invest a lot of money in the LMS, so they want you to use it. We have quite a few Manifold users that will do nothing more than drop the link to their Manifold project into the LMS. And they're like, okay. And then they use the Manifold project as basically their course homepage. The differences are for folks who need a grade book, for folks who want to be able to have their students be able to submit things, right? So you can't really upload things into a Manifold project, assignments. If you've got writing, like blog assignments, things like that, that are part of your course, and LMS may be better suited for you. But I could certainly show anyone who's interested quite a few examples of folks that have ditched the LMS and used their Manifold project as their homepage for their full course with syllabus readings. And then also at the end, if it is an open pedagogy type of course, they will upload the students' work and final projects that are created. So it becomes this kind of complete course there.
Thank you. That's a great question. Okay, I think we are, oh no, here's another one. Can you post the link to such a course? Yes, it is the, let's see, it is up above. I think it was this one. It was the Modern Art and OER Writing Seminar, right? Okay. So there is an example of somebody choosing to use their Manifold project as like their course shell or their course hub. Any other questions or requests? Yes. Well, it's great to have such an engaged group. Thank you so much for sharing your questions with us. And thank you to all of the members of the Manifold community who joined us today and shared your experience and questions. As I mentioned, we will have a publishing debrief if you would like to regroup or if something occurs to you in the next few minutes. I think that'll be in about 45 minutes, 3 to 3:30 Central Time. And again, the session was recorded, so we'll share that with you via email and in the community hub, along with the slides and the transcripts. And of course, we're here for you in the long term. So as you think of things, do let us know. Thank you so much, Teresa, for coming out of retirement to join us. And thanks to Robin and Terrence, as always, for being our Manifold experts. And look forward to seeing you all again soon.